Melody Gardot, it's a pleasure to meet you. Your forthcoming album, Currency of Man, is out soon. Are you happy with the results?
Yeah, I love it. I worked with an amazing team. Larry Klein, Maxime Leguil, Clément Ducol. It's just an amazing group of people, super creative and a little outside the box, which I love.
Excellent. What was your thought process going into the album, as it were?
What do you mean?
What was your inspiration behind it, as it goes, and what did you expect? What did you want to? What were your ambitions?
You know, in the beginning, when we started looking at making a record, it was really just about the songs. You know, it was about the story that the songs would tell together, back to back, and how they would relate to one another. And as we started to go on, it became about the sound. And I think this record is one we've been fortunate to have a lot of time to work on. So we were able to take that time to craft a very particular sound that comes from the album being on tape, that comes from the album being in another tuning, in 432. And it also comes from having some time to really think about the direction of the mixes as we wanted to go. So in that sense, at first it went from song to song, and then it eventually became an evolution about sound. And I love that because we have a chance to look at that and I think make something different. When I listen to that and I listen to other records that Maxime has done, he's an amazing engineer, I start to recognize his sound, but also his sound alongside myself, Maxime, in relation to Clément and in relation to Larry as well.
Yes, it's a slick piece of groovy jazz, funk, soul.
Sorry.
You know, we loved it. You know, jazz, funk, soul. You've got a lot in there. Great Hammond, brass section, gospel moments. I mean, it seems to be there's a lot in the album, but it comes across in a very natural way and very uncomplicated. Is that what you were after as well?
Yeah, that's why it's cut live. You know, we cut everything live in the room to tape, and then later we add elements like orchestra because of timing and physical size of the room. But it was just supposed to be about having a band that I love. These are the musicians I tend to work with on a regular basis, and something that felt like we all enjoyed ourselves in the process of making it. You know, it's very much a group effort. You can hear everybody loving it at the same time.
I mean, the album has got a strong personality. Were you sort of sure of that, of its personality itself, the direction that you were taking?
I think that's writing based, because the way the songs are written is very firm. You know, it's confident, it's very straight to the point.
Yeah.
The poetry is not so dense or far-reaching. I think it's very easy for people to understand what's being said, and even though there's some metaphor and some play in the rhymes and things, in general it's a very straightforward disc, which is best. I think it's always best that things are very simple, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you've spoken out on many worldwide social issues. What subjects influence the writing of Currency of Man?
This is an across-the-board kind of a thing. It's a commentary. It's a commentary that talks about different walks of life, that points out more the similarities than kind of isolates the differences between us. You know, it talks about the beauty of someone who maybe in the grand view is not so incredibly important, but they are also a bright and shining and beautiful human being. It mentions lifestyles and particular personas that maybe we're not even remembering right now, and in some cases, like on Preacher Man, it's even kind of a history lesson that winds itself back forward to where we are now to say, hey man, like how many times we have to repeat the same mistake before we learn from the things we do, you know. Race and racism is not a pedestal that I put myself up on in the sense that I want to shake somebody awake and say, hey, you know, this is what this album is about. No, there is one song that talks about it, and it's important because just like everything else that's mentioned on the album, it's a story about this young boy that not everybody knows. And his story was fundamental in the civil rights movement. His young age of 14 and passing away was huge shockwave sent to the United States, but the manner in which he died is exactly the same as the situations that we're running into now with people in the States and all over the world, people who are dying based solely on the color of their skin, you know. And I think if we look at the world and we look at the way things are, that we assume too many things about each other. We assume that we've made a lot of progress, but in reality we still have some way to go. So this song is a reminder, and amongst my friends and my colleagues and ourselves in our own little group, I think we all feel the same, so it's kind of an anthem. These are little anthems for every man. These are little anthems for the people who maybe got pushed under the rug and nobody's really thinking about, to remind you, like, hey man, like we're all part of one race, a human race. And
yeah,
that
yeah.
doesn't...
I mean, do you find that like a personal obligation almost to raise these issues?
No, it's just in my blood. Like, there is something I want to talk about and it falls out of my mouth. I don't really... I think a lot when I'm alone, and I write a lot, and I don't tend to talk so much, as I do kind of my own personal, and I wouldn't say confessions, but like I talk 2 pages in a book, you know. And when I sit down with people, I'm interested to talk about how they feel about things, and I'm interested to see where their minds are and what they feel about, you know, the state of the world and how much progress we have actually accomplished, and whether or not that progress is twofold, in the sense that while you do something that we consider to be beautiful, we're also destroying something simultaneously. I like the idea of being conscious, and I think being conscious is an obligation when you're a writer, and it's also an obligation when you're an artist. It's very easy to write songs that talk about nothing, and it's very easy to watch them fall away because they don't hold any greater meaning. The songs that we wind up listening to now from years and years ago either recount histories of the time or talk about love or talk about life, you know. Louis Armstrong, Pennies from Heaven, was really something to put joy in the hearts of people who were suffering from depression. Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit, just around the 100th anniversary of her death, it's good to bring her up, was talking about how they were hanging men in the trees, you know. And now I get goosebumps thinking about it, because it's still relevant. It's still relevant because those things are still important to remember. You have to remember that, otherwise you don't know where you came from. And I think in music is just another medium, it's another art form to recount and remember where we've been, to talk about where we are, and to have great hope for our future. So depending on the culture you come from, music can be full of really great wisdom, or it can be full of nothing at all, except maybe some really good rhythm. Maybe there's no lyrics, but it's your job as an artist to talk about that. It's your job, if you have a mouth, to say sensible things, you know.
Yeah, I mean, how do you see the state of the world right now?
Evolving.
Yeah.
And there is a very interesting thing now that I think is wonderful. It's that there's a kind of a conscious awakening in people, where in certain parts of the world we have the access to all kinds of information, and if we only look, you don't have to even look under a rock. If we look around, we can see what's happening. We're not living in such a state of yellow journalism where we can't find the nucleus of the truth behind what's actually being fed to us. There are tons of agencies that have their own agendas, just like an advertising campaign, you know. But at the same time, you can be conscious enough to be aware what's in your food. You can be aware of what the agenda is of someone who's responsible for deciding how much you actually have to pay tax-wise. You know, what's going on, where's the corruption. I think it's very difficult to hide the majority of those things. There are tons of conspiracy theories, so there's a lot of different ideas about what's actually going on, but I think right now is a perfect opportunity for mankind and human beings, no matter where they're from or where they are, to be aware of one another, and to be aware of one another so deeply that if they have the ability to help someone who's their neighbor or near to them or just in front of them temporarily, that they can, you know. Look at Ebola, which is a whole another situation, which has been in Africa for many years. But right now, because of the way that outlets are designed, it's very easy for us to get aid from external places for people to come in. Whereas before the news circuit was so internationally connected, it wouldn't have been so simple. There's positives in that. But in terms of how we are as a race, I think we just need to be careful. I think we need to be careful because we're so keen to make advancements in technology that we forget about the advancements that we need to make in humanity.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you suffered a horrendous accident yourself, which left you hospitalised for a year, and music helped you through it.
Just to to touch on it lightly.
I don't want to bring you back there, but you know, but when you're writing an album, does it help you go back to that time, sort of to starting again, starting afresh, and sort of reconnect with the future in a way?
I don't think so heavily about anything. Whether I like it or not, I'm a part of a wavelength that's around me, and I'm a part of that in the sense that I can react to anything at any particular point in time. There's no conscious decision to wipe the slate clean. There's no conscious decision to destroy the thing that I've done before. It's not like that at all, and I don't do that. Rather, it's about progression. You know, it's when I started to record, I was very young. I didn't know anything about anything. I had played songs by myself, for myself, and so my concern was to do the best I could with that knowledge that I had. I then became a touring musician. I learned what it was to tour a little bit, and I became concerned about the art of having a live band. And so we wanted to do a record with a live band. At that time, that was my one and only thrill. Then I started to travel more. I was influenced by so many other kinds of genres. And in this time around, I have all that knowledge with me, not behind me or in front of me. It's with me. And like any other artist, you're a sponge. You absorb the things that are around you, and you're inspired by them, and you make conclusions because of them. And so now, it's a new element and a new sound, because there are new people working with me. There's a beautiful band beside me. And the lyrics have a home to live in that sounds like it was in that moment. If we did it tomorrow, it wouldn't be the same record. But it was done at a time when everybody was really connected, and so you hear that, and I love that for that. And I want to always make music that's like that. My concern is not about genre. My concern is not about instrumentation. My concern is not about anything for the sake of making a brushstroke in terms of musical definition. But it's to always have something that's conscious, you know. And if my decision is to do something only orchestra, or to play with an Arabic group, or to go to Morocco and play with one instrument from a man in the desert, those are my choices as a musician, because I'm inspired at that time to do something, and I'm free to do that.
Great
but
stuff.
It's conscious.
And just, I know you're a big believer in
I'm so sorry.
Just one question. A big believer in music therapy, as it sort of helped you after your accident. Do you think there's a case for bringing sort of therapy into schools for
Of
kids,
course.
to inspire their creative development?
Well, there are music programs. There are music programs in schools to teach children instruments and things. I don't know if you can explain to a child the benefits of therapy and what it does for the mind, and I don't think it's necessary. I do know that there are various studies that show a child who plays an instrument versus a child who does not at a certain age will do far more better. I have to eat. Sorry. Will do far more better in mathematics and science and his overall scholastics than a child who's not playing an instrument. Why? Probably because the requirements of the brain in order to understand and play tactfully an instrument require new neural pathways to be built in the brain, which means your facility to understand things and your capacity is quicker. So there's extreme cases where someone with autism or someone with a specific blessing could be smarter, but music has a big hand in that. So it's important.
Great stuff. Thanks a lot for your time.
Sorry, it's just...
Anything else you'd like to say to the Music News watchers?
Thank you, and thank you for listening to my album. And are you guys in London? Where is you? You're in London?
Yeah.
So we're not touring there. I'll just say I hope to see you soon. Okay.
Excellent.
Happy listening. Ciao.
Thank you.